Abandoned hospitals, disappearances that were never explained, houses where crimes became legends, cities, cults, and anomalies that don't fit the textbooks. Today, 10 stories, each rooted in a real place and leaving a mark time could not erase. If this format resonates with you, support the video with a like and subscribe to the channel. It truly helps us grow. No more delays. Let's begin. On a quiet hillside in Rockland County, New York, there once stood a place officially described as a care facility. In reality, it became one of the darkest chapters in American institutional history. Letchworth Village opened in 1911 as a home for people with developmental disabilities. It was presented as progressive and humane. Families were told their children would receive care, education, and safety. What happened behind the locked doors was something very different. By the 1940s and 1950s, Letchworth was overcrowded beyond control. Thousands of children and adults were packed into crumbling buildings. Many were subjected to medical experiments without consent. Former staff and survivors later described forced drug testing, early behavioral modification techniques, and experimental treatments tied to Cold War research. Investigations revealed connections between Letchworth and U.S. government-funded programs studying human behavior, disease transmission, and psychological conditioning. Some researchers linked the facility to early experiments related to what would later become known as MK Ultra. Conditions were brutal. Patients were neglected, restrained, or left untreated for years. Many died anonymously. Their graves were unmarked. Records disappeared. In 1972, a shocking television expose forced the state to shut Letchworth down. The buildings were abandoned almost overnight. Today, the ruins still stand. Locals report shadowy figures in broken windows, echoing screams, and children's laughter where no children exist. Paranormal investigators claim equipment malfunctions and sudden drops in temperature inside the wards. Letchworth Village was not haunted by ghosts at first. It was haunted by what was done there. On October 22, 1989, in the small town of St. Joseph, Minnesota, 11-year-old Jacob Wetterling disappeared during what should have been a normal evening bike ride. Jacob and his brother were riding with a friend when a masked man emerged from the darkness, armed with a gun. He ordered the boys to line up, asked their ages, and then made a decision that would haunt America for decades. Jacob was taken. The other children were told to run. Despite massive searches, roadblocks, and one of the largest manhunts in Minnesota history, no trace of Jacob was found. Weeks turned into years. His case went cold, but the fear it created did not. For 27 years, Jacob's disappearance remained one of America's most disturbing unsolved child abductions. Parents across the country began to realize how vulnerable children truly were. The case became a symbol of every missing child whose name was never answered. In 1994, Jacob's legacy changed the nation. His disappearance directly led to the creation of the Jacob Wetterling Crimes Against Children and Sexually Violent Offender Registration Act. This law became the foundation for America's modern sex offender registry system. In 2016, a man named Danny Heinrich confessed. He admitted to abducting and killing Jacob on the night he vanished. Jacob's remains were finally recovered, ending one of the longest and most painful mysteries in U.S. history. But even with answers, the case left scars. An entire generation grew up under new rules, new fears, and new laws, all born from one moment on a dark Minnesota road. Jacob Wetterling did not just disappear. His absence changed America forever. On the morning of August 4, 1892, the quiet town of Fall River, Massachusetts, became the scene of one of the most infamous murders in American history. Andrew and Abby Borden were brutally killed inside their own home. Andrew was struck in the face with an axe while resting on a couch. Abby was murdered upstairs, her skull shattered by repeated blows. The weapon was never definitively identified, and the crime scene was disturbingly calm. No screams heard, no forced entry, no clear suspect fleeing. Suspicion quickly fell on Andrew's daughter, Lizzie Borden. She was inside the house at the time, gave conflicting statements, and had a known motive rooted in family tension and inheritance disputes. The press turned the case into a national obsession. Lizzie Borden took an axe became a rhyme known across America. Despite the circumstantial evidence, Lizzie was acquitted in 1893. The jury found her not guilty, and the case officially ended, but the mystery did not. To this day, no one knows who truly committed the murders. Modern forensic experts argue that the crime would have been nearly impossible for an outsider to commit unnoticed. Others believe crucial evidence was ignored due to Lizzie's social status. The Borden House still stands. Visitors report footsteps in empty rooms, whispers near the staircase, and the feeling of being watched. Some claim to see shadowy figures or hear a woman crying softly at night. More than a century later, the Axe murders remain unsolved. Not because there are no theories, but because the truth may have been sitting inside the house all along. In the early 1970s, scientists analyzing uranium samples made a discovery so disturbing that it quietly challenged everything we know about human history and technology. The anomaly was found in Oklo, a remote region where uranium ore showed something impossible. The natural concentration of uranium-235 was far lower than it should be. The only known process that could cause this depletion was nuclear fission, the same reaction used in modern nuclear reactors. Further analysis, including studies conducted in U.S. laboratories, revealed that Oklo had once functioned as a self-sustaining nuclear reactor, not for minutes or days, but for hundreds of thousands of years, and it operated 2 billion years ago. According to official explanations, unique geological conditions allowed water to act as a natural moderator, triggering controlled nuclear reactions. But this raises unsettling questions. The reactor showed signs of regulation, cycling on and off like a designed system. Radioactive waste products were contained in place with astonishing stability, something modern engineers still struggle to achieve. The bigger mystery is timing. 2 billion years ago, Earth was supposedly inhabited only by simple single-celled organisms. No tools, no civilization, no intelligence capable of manipulating nuclear reactions. So who or what built it? Some researchers suggest the possibility of a long-lost advanced civilization that predates humanity by an incomprehensible margin. Others speculate about non-human intelligence or forgotten chapters of Earth's past that were erased by time. The U.S. government has acknowledged the phenomenon as real. The data is real. The reactions happened. What remains unexplained is the most terrifying part: how advanced technology existed long before it was ever supposed to. High on the side of Cleopatra Hill in Arizona sits the town of Jerome, a place that looks abandoned, broken, and unnervingly alive at the same time. Founded in the late 1800s as a booming copper mining town, Jerome was once known as the wickedest town in the West. Thousands of miners worked beneath it, carving miles of tunnels deep into the mountain. Accidents were constant. Cave-ins, gas leaks, explosions, death was part of daily life. When the mines closed in the 1950s, the town collapsed almost overnight. Buildings slid down the mountain. Entire streets were abandoned. But locals insist something else stayed behind. Residents and visitors report hearing whispers coming from beneath the ground, voices rising through floors, walls, and old mine shafts. Some describe the sound of footsteps pacing below them, even in buildings with sealed basements. Others hear knocking, as if someone is trying to escape from under the town. The most haunted location is the former Jerome Grand Hotel, once a hospital for injured miners. Guests report phantom hands grabbing their ankles, unseen figures sitting on beds, and voices calling nurses' names long after the hospital closed. Elevators stop on floors that no longer exist. Children's laughter echoes in empty hallways. Geologists confirm that Jerome sits atop a vast network of abandoned tunnels, many unmapped and unstable. But that doesn't explain why voices sometimes respond when spoken to, or why recording devices pick up whispered phrases no one heard at the time. Some believe the mountain itself remembers. Others say the dead miners never left, trapped between collapsed tunnels and unfinished lives. Jerome isn't just haunted by ghosts, it's haunted by everything buried beneath it and by the voices that still want to be heard.
In the Appalachian Mountains, fog is more than weather. Locals treat it as a warning. Stretching from Georgia to Pennsylvania, Appalachia is one of the oldest mountain ranges on Earth. Dense forests, deep hollows, and poor radio reception make entire areas feel cut off from time. But the real fear comes when the fog rolls in unnaturally fast, thick, silent, and wrong. Generations of mountain families share the same rule: never whistle back when you hear it. Hikers and hunters report hearing a single whistle echo through the fog, not like a bird, not like wind. It's deliberate, patterned, almost curious. Those who respond describe the sound moving closer, circling them, as if something is trying to locate its reply. Some say the fog muffles footsteps until it's impossible to tell which direction they're coming from. Others claim voices imitate loved ones, calling names from just beyond visibility. Search and rescue teams confirm that people sometimes walk toward danger during these events, off trails, into ravines, or straight into dense forest. Anthropologists trace the warnings back to Native American legends describing the Whistlers, entities said to live in the mist, using sound to lure travelers away from safety. Early settlers adopted the same belief after unexplained disappearances in fog-heavy regions. Modern explanations blame disorientation and sound distortion in low-visibility environments, but that doesn't explain why recordings sometimes capture whistles with no visible source, or why compasses and GPS devices briefly malfunction when the fog appears. The most chilling detail is consistency. Different states, different centuries, same rule. When the Appalachian fog surrounds you and you hear a whistle, it's not asking where you are. It's checking if you'll answer. Off the coast of North Carolina, beneath shifting sand and dark Atlantic currents, lies the wreck of one of the most infamous ships in history, Queen Anne's Revenge, the flagship of pirate Edward Teach, better known as Blackbeard. In 1718, the ship ran aground near Beaufort Inlet. Officially, it was an accident. Unofficially, historians believe Blackbeard deliberately destroyed the vessel to abandon part of his crew and disappear with his wealth. Shortly after, he was killed in battle,
his head severed and displayed as a warning. But sailors say the ship never truly sank. Since its rediscovery in 1996, divers and fishermen have reported disturbing phenomena around the wreck site. Compasses spin erratically, engines stall without explanation. At night, faint lantern-like lights appear just above the water, moving in slow arcs, exactly where the deck would have been. Divers describe hearing metal chains dragging, despite no chains being loose. Others claim shadowy human shapes move between cannons, visible only at the edge of vision. One diver abruptly surfaced during an expedition, insisting he felt a hand grab his ankle. There was no one behind him. Local legend says Blackbeard tied burning fuses into his beard to appear supernatural in battle. Now witnesses claim to smell sulfur and smoke on calm nights when the sea should carry no scent at all. Marine archaeologists confirm strange data spikes near the wreck, but avoid paranormal conclusions. Still, expeditions are frequently cut short due to unexplained equipment failures. According to coastal folklore, Blackbeard's spirit remains bound to his ship, not guarding treasure, but replaying the betrayal that ended his reign. The Queen Anne's Revenge doesn't sail anymore, but something down there is still awake. On April 24, 1964, in the desert outskirts of Socorro, New Mexico, a routine police chase turned into one of the most detailed and credible UFO encounters ever recorded. Police officer Lonnie Zamora was pursuing a speeding vehicle when he heard a loud roar, unlike any engine he had ever heard. He saw a blue-orange flame descending behind a nearby mesa. Assuming it was an explosion or a crashed aircraft, Zamora drove toward the sound. What he found defied explanation. In a small ravine, Zamora observed a shiny, oval-shaped craft about the size of a car, resting on 4 landing legs. Near it stood 2 small humanoid figures, dressed in white, appearing startled by his presence. As Zamora approached, the figures quickly vanished behind the object. Moments later, the craft ignited with a thunderous roar, scorching the ground, lifting straight up, and shooting into the sky at incredible speed, leaving no smoke trail. The physical evidence was undeniable. Investigators found burn marks, scorched vegetation, and 4 distinct landing impressions pressed deep into the soil. Zamora, a respected officer with no history of fabrication, was visibly shaken and reluctant to speak publicly. The case was investigated by the U.S. Air Force's Project Blue Book, the FBI, and independent scientists. Despite exhaustive analysis, the Air Force classified the incident as unidentified. Even Blue Book's chief scientific consultant later admitted the case could not be explained by experimental aircraft or hoaxes. Decades later, no technology, then or now, fully matches Zamora's description. To this day, the Socorro landing remains one of the few UFO cases supported by credible witnesses, physical traces, and official documentation. Whatever Zamora encountered in the desert that afternoon, it landed. In the mid-1960s, a strange and unsettling religious movement quietly spread from San Francisco and Los Angeles into the darker corners of American counterculture. It called itself the Process Church of the Final Judgment, and its beliefs were unlike anything the public had seen before. Founded by British expatriates Marianne MacLean and Robert de Grimston, the cult taught that God and Satan were not enemies, but forces that would eventually unite at the end of time. Their theology revolved around 4 archetypes: Jehovah, Lucifer, Satan, and Christ, and followers were encouraged to embrace both light and darkness within themselves. dressed in black cloaks and displaying an unsettling goat skull symbol. Members were often seen silently distributing magazines on city streets. At first, they appeared eccentric but harmless. Then, the connections began to surface. Several notorious criminals, including Charles Manson, had documented contact with the group or its teachings. Manson reportedly absorbed elements of process ideology, particularly its apocalyptic worldview and fixation on Judgment Day. Other violent offenders were later found possessing process literature, sparking widespread fear. Although the church denied any involvement in crimes, law enforcement and journalists grew deeply suspicious. Rumors spread of ritual abuse, psychological manipulation, and covert influence over unstable individuals. No definitive proof ever tied the cult directly to murders, but the pattern was disturbing enough to draw federal attention. By the mid-1970s, the Process Church abruptly dissolved, rebranding itself into a benign animal welfare organization. Many former members vanished into anonymity. To this day, the question remains unanswered. Was the Process Church simply misunderstood, or did its ideas quietly help shape some of America's darkest minds? In 2019, a single anonymous photo of a vacant office with yellowed wallpaper birthed the defining nightmare of the digital age, the Backrooms. Yet, behind the surreal legend of infinite empty dimensions lies a tangible and chilling reality: the decaying industrial zones of the United States. These are the liminal spaces, threshold zones stripped of people and purpose. Vast office complexes in the Rust Belt, derelict retail hubs in Ohio and Texas, and mammoth windowless distribution centers. Within these walls, time seems to stagnate, and the monotonous, maddening hum of ancient HVAC systems becomes the only companion to a stray visitor. The true horror of these locations is their sheer scale. In the 1970s, corporate architecture aimed for maximum density, hundreds of identical cubicles, miles of cheap carpeting, and fluorescent lights that never turn off. When companies went bankrupt, these buildings weren't always demolished. They remained locked, thousands of square feet of artificial worlds where the lights continue to burn in empty holes for decades. Urban explorers who have infiltrated such zones, like the abandoned office labyrinths beneath Chicago, describe a phenomenon known as spatial glitching. Without landmarks or natural light, the brain loses the ability to distinguish left from right within minutes. A paralyzing sensation arises that the building itself is rearranging its corridors the moment you turn your head. The most intriguing detail comes from the reports of technicians maintaining heating systems in these dead zones. Many describe acoustic echoes, footsteps heard around a corner in a verified empty building, or the sound of a door opening in a wing that has been boarded up for 30 years. The Backrooms is more than an internet myth. It is a monument to the human drive to build worlds where we don't belong. These spaces exist right now, behind the nondescript doors of gray concrete buildings, in total silence, bathed in sickly yellow light, waiting for someone to accidentally slip past the edges of reality. If you enjoyed the video, support it with a like and subscribe to the channel for future episodes. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.